The silence in the Galactic Council chambers was heavy like a storm cloud. Ambassador Dae-ho Kim stood at the center of the massive room, his hands folded behind his back. Above him, thousands of alien beings floated, crawled, and shifted in, their seats, their eyes, sensors, and other strange organs all focused on him. The Valari looked like living crystals. They sparkled and rang like bells when they moved. The Nethrix were clouds of gas that spoke through vibrations in the air. The Kolani moved as one mind in thousands of bodies, their insect-like forms clicking in perfect rhythm. These three races controlled the Council. They had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years. Today, they would decide humanity's fate. The crystal speaker, the leader of the Valari, rang out in its musical voice. The matter of species designation Earth-Human Soul 3 has been reviewed. The evidence is clear. This species shows dangerous patterns. Dae-ho kept his face calm, but his heart was beating fast. He had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years. He had seen this coming for months. The signs were all there. Too many complaints, too many reports, too many fears. They expand too quickly, continued the crystal speaker. In 300 years, they have spread to 47 worlds. This rate of growth is unprecedented. It suggests aggressive territorial behavior. A Nethrix cloud drifted forward, its voice like wind through leaves. Their genetic diversity is unstable. Most species achieve unity through evolution. Humans remain divided into countless subspecies, languages, and belief systems. This creates unpredictable behavior patterns. The Kolani swarm voice spoke with 1,000 mouths at once. Most concerning are their military innovations. They develop new weapons faster than any species we have recorded. They study warfare as others study art. They celebrate their soldiers as heroes. This indicates a fundamentally aggressive nature. Dae-ho had heard these same arguments many times. He stepped forward to speak, but the crystal speaker's tone grew sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. The vote has been taken. 847 in favor, 1 opposed, 0 abstaining. Species Earth-Human Soul 3 is hereby prohibited. From expansion beyond their origin system, immediate containment protocols will be implemented. The words hit Dae-ho like a physical blow. He had expected this, but hearing it still felt like falling off a cliff. Around the chamber, alien voices rose in approval. Clicks, whistles, and electronic tones filled the air. The decision was popular. "This is a mistake," Dae-ho said, his voice carrying clearly through the noise. The chamber fell quiet again. Humanity has been peaceful. We have followed all treaties. We have contributed to galactic science and culture. We have never started a war with any council species. The crystal speaker's light dimmed slightly. Ambassador Kim, your species' intentions may be peaceful now, but your nature suggests future aggression. We cannot wait for proof. Prevention is better than cure. You're judging us for what you think we might do, not what we have done. Correct. The Council's responsibility is to maintain galactic peace. Your species represents a statistical probability of future conflict that we cannot accept. Dae-ho felt anger building in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry now would only prove their point. What about our colonies? Our citizens living on other worlds? Our trade agreements? All human colonies will be evacuated within 1 standard year. Colonial populations will be returned to Sol system. All trade agreements are terminated immediately. All diplomatic relations are suspended. The chamber began to empty as alien delegates floated, crawled, and drifted toward the exits. For them, this was just another day of business. For humanity, it was the end of their future among the stars. Dae-ho activated his communication device. The holographic image of Captain Bo-Ra-Lee appeared, her face tight with concern. Behind her, he could see the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest diplomatic vessel. "Captain Lee, What's your status? Not good, Ambassador. We've got company. Big company. Bo-Ra's voice was steady, but Deho could hear the tension underneath. 37 Kalani dreadnoughts just dropped out of hyperspace. They're taking positions around the system. Are they hostile? No direct threats, yet. But they're not here for a social visit. They're deploying some kind of energy web between their ships. Bo-Ra paused, checking her instruments. Jinwoo thinks it's a containment field. Tactical Officer Jinwoo Park's voice came through the communication system. It's definitely containment tech, Ambassador. They're building a barrier around the entire Sol system. Nothing gets in or out without their permission. Deho closed his eyes for a moment. It was really happening. Humanity was being caged like dangerous animals. Captain, return to Earth immediately. Brief the President on everything you've observed. Already on our way, sir. Hye-Jin has the engines running hot. Back on Earth, President Taemin Yoon stood in the Oval Office, staring out at the night sky. The stars looked the same as always, but everything had changed. His communication system was buzzing with calls from world leaders, military commanders, and scientists. The door opened, and his chief of staff entered. Mr. President, we have confirmation. The containment field is 93% complete. They're using quantum mesh technology we've never seen before. Taemin turned from the window. How long before we're completely sealed in? 18 hours, maybe less. And our people on the colonies? Evacuation ships are already launching from Council worlds. They'll be home within the year, assuming the aliens keep their word. Taemin nodded slowly. 3 centuries of peaceful expansion ended in a single day. 47 worlds lost. Millions of humans forced to abandon the only homes they had ever known. All because aliens were afraid of what humans might do someday. But the president knew something the aliens did not. Hidden deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Subin Han was already at work. She had been expecting this day for decades. Her team had been preparing for it since the first reports of alien hostility toward human expansion. Subin's fingers moved quickly over her control panel. Around the world, similar panels were lighting up in secret facilities. On the moon, under the ice of Europa, in the asteroid belt, and in the depths of Mars, hidden systems came online. Project Prometheus had been humanity's insurance policy. Started 50 years ago by the most paranoid military planners Earth had ever produced, it was based on a simple idea. If the aliens ever decided humans were too dangerous to live free, humans had better be ready to prove them right. The containment. Field sealed shut with a flash of light that could be seen from Earth's surface. Humanity was trapped in their home system, cut off from the stars they had dreamed of reaching since the dawn of time. But in the hidden depths of Project Prometheus, Subin Han smiled grimly as her systems showed green across the board. The aliens thought they had caged humanity. What they had really done was give humanity time to prepare for war, and humanity had always been very, very good at war. 6 months had passed since the containment field went up around the Sol system. The Galactic Council believed they had solved their human problem. Their surveillance drones reported exactly what they wanted to see: a civilization slowly falling apart. On the Council homeworlds, the news was good. Factory output in the Sol system had dropped by 60%. Military shipbuilding had almost stopped completely. Communication traffic between Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies had fallen to emergency levels only. Even better, there were reports of social unrest, food riots, and political chaos. Council Overseer Velnath, a Valari crystal being whose body sparkled with satisfaction, addressed the monthly assembly. The human containment proceeds as expected. Their aggressive nature is turning inward. They are destroying themselves, saving us the trouble. The gathered aliens clicked, whistled, and hummed their approval. The Nethrix clouds swirled in patterns that meant happiness. The colony hives sent waves of contentment through their shared consciousness. The human problem was solving itself. They were completely wrong. Deep inside the asteroid Ceres, Commander Dong-hyun Seo stood in a command center that officially did not exist. Around him, thousands of technicians worked at stations building something the Council had never seen before. The quantum displacement network was nearly complete. "Status report," Dong-hyun called out to his chief engineer. "All nodes are online." "Commander," replied the engineer, checking her displays. "We have functional quantum tunnels connecting 17 major installations. The network can transport anything from a single person to a full battleship instantaneously across any distance." Dong-hyun smiled. The aliens thought they had trapped humanity in one star system. What they had really done was give humanity 6 months to perfect technology that made distance meaningless. Every abandoned mining station, every failed colony, ship, every destroyed outpost from the past 50 years was actually a hidden base in the network. On the dark side of the moon, Lieutenant Mi Young-jung was testing humanity's other secret weapon. Her ship looked normal from the outside, just another standard patrol vessel. But when she activated the experimental systems, the ship simply vanished. "Ghost protocol active," she reported to her crew. "We are now existing in quantum superposition. All alien sensors should read us as empty space." Her pilot, Kyung-soo Baek, checked his instruments with amazement. "I can barely detect us myself. How did our scientists figure this out?" "By studying every piece of alien wreckage we could find for the past 60 years, Mi-young replied, "and by assuming this day would come eventually." Systems analyst Nari Oh monitored their approach to the containment field. The massive energy barrier stretched across space like a glowing wall. It was designed to detect and stop anything trying to pass through it. "Field contact in 30 seconds, Nari announced. "All systems showing normal. The aliens have no idea we're here." The ship passed through the containment field like it was made of air. Alarms should have sounded. Defense systems should have activated. Instead, nothing happened. The ghost ship was completely invisible to the most advanced detection systems in the galaxy. "We're through," Kyung-soo said quietly. "We're actually through. We can go anywhere." Meanwhile, on Earth, xenobiologist Young-ho Kwon was finishing work that would change everything. His laboratory was filled with captured alien technology from 3 centuries of contact: weapons, computers, life support systems, and communication. Devices had all been studied, reverse-engineered, and improved. "Yoon-ji, come look at this," Young-ho called to his research partner. Dr. Yoon-ji Song hurried over to his workstation. On the screen was a detailed analysis of colony neural networks. "You found their weakness?" "Better than that. I found how to turn their greatest strength into their worst nightmare." Young-ho pointed to the data flowing across his screen. "The colony share consciousness across their entire hive. Every drone is connected to every other drone. They think this makes them stronger. And you found a way to use that connection against them? A virus that spreads through their neural link. Once it infects one drone, it spreads to the entire hive within hours. It doesn't kill them, but it causes feedback loops that paralyze their decision-making processes. They become trapped in endless loops of confused thought." Yoon-ji stared at the data with amazement and horror. "Young-ho, this could affect billions of colony at once." "That's the idea. They wanted to judge us for being dangerous. Let's show them what dangerous really looks like." In space, the alien surveillance continued to report human decline. What the drones could not see were the activities happening in quantum-shifted space, underground, and in facilities that existed between dimensions. Humanity had learned to hide in ways that alien minds could not imagine. President Tae-min-yoon stood in the real situation room, not the fake one that alien surveillance sometimes observed. Around him, holographic displays showed the true state of humanity's preparations. "Give me the full report," he ordered. Defense Secretary Kim Do-won stepped forward. "Mr. President, We have ghost ships positioned within striking distance of 43 major council worlds. Our quantum displacement network can deploy full battle fleets to any location in the galaxy within minutes. Our weapons research has produced systems that can exploit every known weakness of every council species. What about our people on the evacuated colonies? All accounted for, sir. But that's the interesting part. According to our records, we evacuated 1.2 million colonists from council worlds. According to alien records, they returned 1.2 million humans to the Sol system. Taemin raised an eyebrow. And the reality? We evacuated 1.2 million colonists and replaced them with 1.2 million covert operatives, deep cover agents who have been training for this mission their entire lives. The aliens think they removed all humans from their territories. Actually, we have more humans in council space now than ever before. The president walked to the large display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked council worlds. Blue dots showed human positions. There were far more blue dots than red ones, and they were everywhere. How long have we been planning this? Taemin asked. Dr. Subin Han, director of Project Prometheus, appeared on screen from her command center. Since the day we made first contact, Mr. President, the military planners who started this project knew that peaceful species don't survive first contact with aggressive ones. They assumed we were the aggressive ones, and they prepared accordingly. And if they had accepted us peacefully, then none of this would have been necessary. These weapons would have remained hidden forever. But they chose to see us as a threat that needed to be contained. So we became exactly the threat they feared. On council worlds across the galaxy, the alien leaders continued their daily routines, completely unaware that human agents walked. Among them, ghost ships hung invisible in their orbital space. Quantum tunnels connected every major system to Earth's hidden military bases. The Council had given humanity 6 months to accept containment and learn to live in a cage. Instead, humanity had used those 6 months to surround their captors. The predator had been patient, studying its prey, learning their weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment was coming soon. The attack began at exactly Oro 300 Galactic Standard Time across 12 worlds simultaneously. Admiral Wu Jin Han watched from the command bridge of the UES Retribution as his carefully planned operation unfolded. For 6 months, the galaxy had seen humanity as a caged animal. Now they would learn what happens when that animal breaks free. All strike teams report ready, his communications officer announced. Execute Operation Prometheus, Wu Jin commanded. Across the galaxy, quantum tunnels opened in spaces where nothing should exist. Human ships materialized inside alien defense perimeters, bypassing shields, sensor networks, and orbital fortresses. The element of surprise was total. On SciFiPrime, the crystalline homeworld rang with musical tones as its inhabitants went about their daily routines. The Valari lived in perfect harmony, their crystal cities resonating with mathematical precision. They believed in order, logic, and predictable patterns. They were completely unprepared for human chaos. Colonel So-Young Kim led the first wave through a quantum tunnel that opened directly in the planet's upper atmosphere. Her drop pods scattered like seeds on the wind, each one carrying soldiers who had trained for this exact mission for years. Remember, these aren't just aliens, So-Young told her troops as they fell toward the crystal forests below. They're the ones who voted to cage us. Today we show them what caged humans can do. The Valari Defense Forces responded exactly as human strategists had predicted. They moved in perfect formations, followed mathematical combat algorithms, and tried to create ordered battle lines. Against any normal enemy, these tactics would have been devastatingly effective. But humans didn't fight like any normal enemy. So-Young's troops scattered in all directions the moment they hit the ground. They ignored the crystal roads, cut through the resonant forests, and attacked from angles that shouldn't have been possible. When the Valari tried to surround them, the humans were already somewhere else. When they tried to predict human movements, The humans changed tactics completely. Their central command nexus is 12 kilometers north, reported Sergeant Jae-hoon Lee through the communication system. I can see the crystal spire from here. Negative on direct assault, So-young replied. We do this the human way. Tae-woo, what's the resonant frequency of their main crystal? Tech specialist Kim Tae-woo had been studying Volari crystal technology for 3 years. Harmonics suggest 847.3 Hz for structural crystals, Colonel. But if we hit them at 423.65 Hz, we can create interference patterns. Do it. What followed was something the Volari had never experienced in 10,000 years of existence. Human sonic weapons, tuned to exactly the wrong frequency, turned the crystal being's perfect harmony into screaming discord. Crystal structures began to crack. Communication networks failed as resonant patterns collapsed into static. The Volari Defense Forces tried to retreat to their command center, but found their own crystal roads had become traps. Every step they took sent vibrations through the ground that human sensors could track perfectly. They were being hunted by predators who had turned their entire world against them. Meanwhile, in orbit around Kolani Hive World Beta 7, Captain Jun Seo Park commanded a very different kind of attack. The Kolani were the galaxy's ultimate collective. Consciousness. Billions of individual drones connected through neural networks, thinking and acting as one. Target acquired, announced his weapons officer. The primary neural relay station is directly below us. Negative, Jun Seo replied calmly. We're not targeting their buildings. We're targeting their minds. The weapon that launched from his ship wasn't a missile or an energy beam. It was something far more dangerous. A specially designed virus that Young Ho Kwan had created specifically for Kalani neural networks. The virus spread through the hive network like wildfire through dry grass. Within minutes, it had infected thousands of drones. Within an hour, it had reached millions. But it didn't kill them. Instead, it did something much worse. On the planet's surface, Kolani drones began stopping in the middle of their tasks. They stood perfectly still, their insect-like bodies twitching slightly as their shared consciousness became trapped in endless loops of confused thought. The virus caused feedback in their neural networks, making them think the same thoughts over and over again without being able to move forward. A hive world that had operated with perfect efficiency for centuries ground to a complete halt in less than 6 hours. The Nethrix faced their own nightmare in the gas giant Nimbus. These beings existed as distributed consciousness in vast cloud formations, their thoughts flowing through atmospheric currents across entire continents. Commander Hanul Lee's fleet dropped atmospheric processors into the planet's upper atmosphere, but these weren't normal terraforming devices. They were consciousness scrubbers, designed to do to the Nethrix what a tornado does to a cloud. The gas beings tried to resist, forming tighter defensive formations and strengthening their distributed networks. But the human devices created artificial wind patterns that tore their thoughts apart. Consciousness that had drifted freely across thousands of cubic kilometers was suddenly compressed into small, dense pockets. For the first time in their species, individual Nethrix found themselves alone with their own thoughts, cut off from the collective wisdom they had always shared. The experience was so alien to them that most simply shut down completely, unable to function as individuals. Back on Earth, President Tae Min-yoon received reports from all 12 strike zones. Each attack had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. The aliens had prepared for conventional warfare, orbital bombardment, and fleet actions. They had never prepared for enemies who attacked their fundamental nature as species. Casualties, he asked Defense Secretary Kim Do-won. Minimal on our side, sir. The aliens were so surprised they barely offered resistance. Most of their defense systems never even activated. And alien casualties? Also minimal, sir. Our goal was disruption, not destruction. The Volari are deaf and confused, the Kalani are paralyzed, and the Nethrix are isolated and panicking. But they're all still alive. Taemin nodded approvingly. Good. Dead martyrs unite enemies. Humiliated survivors make them question everything. On the Galactic Council Emergency Communication Network, panic spread faster than the human attacks. Overseer Velnath's crystal body was cracked and dim as he tried to process what had happened. "How did they penetrate our defenses?" he asked the emergency assembly. "Our sensors detected nothing. Our orbital platforms saw nothing. They appeared from nowhere." The Nethrix representative, now speaking from a much smaller cloud formation, whispered through the communication system, "Their ships exist outside normal space-time. Our detection methods are useless against quantum displacement technology." "Where did they get such technology?" demanded the Kolani swarm voice, though it spoke with noticeably fewer voices than before. "We don't know," Velnath admitted, "but analysis suggests they have been developing it for decades, possibly since first contact." A terrible silence fell over the emergency assembly as the implications sank in. The primitive humans had been preparing for this day for 50 years. While the Council had been debating containment, humanity had been building the tools to break every chain the galaxy could forge. A new transmission cut through the silence. President Taemin Yoon's image appeared on every Council communication system simultaneously, transmitted through networks the aliens thought were secure. "You wanted to contain us because you thought we were dangerous," Yoon said calmly. "You were right. But you made one critical error. You gave us time to show you exactly how dangerous we could be." The transmission ended, leaving the Council leaders alone with their fears and their failures. Across 12 worlds, human forces had appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating effectiveness, and disappeared again into quantum tunnels that led back to the Sol system. The containment field was still in place. Humanity was still trapped in their home system. But somehow, that cage had become meaningless. The predators were already among the prey. The Council's response was swift and terrible. Deep in the archives of their oldest worlds, weapons that had slept for millennia began to wake up. These were not the clean, precise tools used for normal warfare. These were the planet killers, the star breakers, the weapons that had ended entire civilizations during the Great Purge long ago. Supreme War Commander Kethnol was one of the few beings old enough to remember those ancient weapons. His species, the Zephirites, had been wiped out by the Council eons ago, but he alone had survived by joining their military. Now, twisted by centuries of service to his people's killers, he commanded the most devastating fleet in galactic history. "Activate the Void Cannons," Kethnol ordered from his flagship, a massive construct that looked more like a small moon than a ship. "Prepare the reality shapers. Deploy the time bombs." His subordinates hesitated. These weapons had been banned for good reason. They didn't just destroy enemies. They erased them from existence, rewrote the laws of physics around them, or trapped them in temporal loops that lasted forever. "Sir," his weapons officer stammered, "these weapons could destroy entire star systems. There will be nothing left of the Sol system if we use them." Kethnol's ancient eyes burned with hatred that had festered for thousands of years. Good. The humans wanted to show us how dangerous they could be. Now we will show them how dangerous we have always been. The Council Armada that formed around Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in recorded history. Ships that had been locked in secure vaults were brought out and reactivated. Beings that had been sleeping in stasis pods for millennia were awakened to crew them. Even the pacifist species contributed weapons they had sworn never to use again. But as the massive fleet approached the Sol system, they found something waiting for them that should not have existed. Admiral Sangwook Choi stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the alien armada approach through sensors that could see across dimensions. His ship, like the rest of the human fleet, existed in several realities at once, making it nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. "Count them," he ordered his tactical officer. 16,000 ships, Admiral. That's not counting the planet killers." Those are in a class by themselves. Sang-Wook nodded calmly. The aliens had brought enough firepower to sterilize half the galaxy. Against any normal enemy, victory would be certain. But the humans had spent 6 months studying every piece of alien technology they could find, including the ancient weapons now pointed at Earth. Do they still think we're trapped in this system? Apparently, sir, their formation suggests they expect to find us cowering behind our planets, waiting for the end. Instead, they found a human battle group that defied every law of physics the aliens understood. Ships that phased in and out of reality, striking from impossible angles with weapons that shouldn't exist. The containment field was still active around the Sol system, but it had become meaningless. Humanity had learned to fight outside the normal rules of space and time. The first engagement was a disaster for the Council forces. Their ancient weapons, designed to destroy planets and stars, were useless against enemies that existed partially in other dimensions. When they fired their void cannons, the energy passed harmlessly through targets that were no longer entirely in normal space. Captain Eugene Lim led her fighter squadron in a direct assault on the Valari Crystal Matrix ship, the Council's command vessel. The ship was a marvel of engineering, its crystalline structure designed to be mathematically perfect and absolutely indestructible. "Beginning resonance attack," Eugene announced to her pilots. "Remember, we're not trying to break their crystals. We're trying to make them sing." Her fighters swooped through the crystal ship's defensive grid, each one broadcasting a carefully calculated frequency. The Valari had built their ship to withstand any physical attack, but they had never considered what would happen if someone turned their perfect crystal harmony against them. The frequencies created interference patterns throughout the ship's structure. Crystal nodes that had operated in perfect synchronization for centuries suddenly began vibrating at different rates. The mathematical precision that made the ship so strong became its weakness as resonant feedback tore through its systems. Within minutes, the entire vessel was singing itself apart. Crystal fragments spiraled away into space as the ship's perfect geometry collapsed into chaos. The aliens' most advanced battleship destroyed itself, trying to maintain harmony in the face of deliberate discord. On Earth's moon, General Min Ho-Yu prepared for the ground assault he knew was coming. The aliens would eventually realize their space-based weapons were useless and try to land forces on human worlds. When they did, they would find that humanity had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. The first Kolani swarm ships landed in the Sea of Tranquility, disgorging millions of drone soldiers that immediately began advancing on the lunar cities. The aliens expected to overwhelm human defenders with sheer numbers, just as they had conquered countless worlds before. What they found instead was terrain that had been prepared for exactly this kind of attack for decades. Every crater had been turned into a kill zone. Every mountain had weapons hidden in its peaks. Every valley channeled attackers exactly where human forces wanted them to go. The Kolani drones moved in perfect formation, following tactical algorithms that had been successful for millennia. But those algorithms had been designed for fighting on planets with normal gravity and predictable terrain. The moon's low gravity and artificially modified landscape turned their advantages into weaknesses. Human soldiers, trained since childhood in low-gravity combat, bounced between crater walls and mountain peaks like deadly acrobats. They struck from above, below, and angles the Kolani had never encountered. When the aliens tried to adapt their formations, they found that human tactics changed faster than their hive mind could process. "They're learning too slowly," General Minho observed from his command bunker. "Their hive mind makes them smart, but it also makes them predictable. They can't adapt as fast as individuals can." The battle for the moon became a textbook example of why human unpredictability was so feared throughout the galaxy. Every time the aliens thought they had figured out human tactics, the humans did something completely different. Soldiers who had been retreating suddenly attacked. Units that had been fighting defensively switched to offense without warning. Formations that looked chaotic somehow worked perfectly. But the real turning point came when Dr. Subin Han activated the final phase of Project Prometheus. Across the galaxy, on worlds the Council thought were secure, sleeper agents who had been waiting for decades suddenly revealed themselves. These weren't the covert operatives who had replaced the evacuated colonists. These were humans who had been embedded in alien societies for generations, some of them born on alien worlds and raised to look and act like natives until this moment. On the Nethrix homeworld of Arios, weather systems that had been stable for centuries suddenly began generating impossible storm patterns. What looked like natural disasters were actually coordinated attacks by humans who had learned to manipulate atmospheric conditions from the inside. On Valari's secondary worlds, Crystal, resonance networks began broadcasting harmony patterns that sent the crystalline inhabitants into states of confused bliss. They stood motionless in their crystal gardens, lost in mathematical equations that had no solutions. Kolani hive worlds found their neural networks infected with new variants of the consciousness virus, spread by drones who had been secretly working for humanity for years without the hive mind ever knowing. President Taemin Yoon stood in his command center, watching status reports pour in from across the galaxy. The alien coalition that had seemed so overwhelming was falling apart faster than anyone had predicted. "How long has this really been going on?" he asked Dr. Subin Han. "Since first contact, Mr. President, every human exploration mission, every diplomatic exchange, every trade negotiation, they all serve dual purposes. We've been mapping their worlds, studying their weaknesses, and placing our people in position for 70 years. And they never suspected? They saw what they expected to see. A young, aggressive species that expanded too quickly and fought too much. They never looked for the quiet, patient intelligence underneath all that noise." On the flagship of the Council fleet, Supreme War Commander Kethnal stared at his tactical displays in growing horror. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist. His ground forces were trapped and being systematically eliminated. Worst of all, reports were coming in from across the galaxy of simultaneous uprisings on worlds that should have been secure. "How many of them are there?" he whispered to himself. His communications officer, a young Nethrix who had never seen warfare like this, answered with a trembling voice. "Sir, based on these reports, humans have been present on every major world in Council space for decades. We're not fighting an invasion. We're fighting a revolution that's been building since before most of us were born." The old war commander felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: fear. Not fear of death, but fear of an enemy so patient, so thorough, and so utterly ruthless that they had spent nearly a century preparing for this single moment. 6 months after the Great Battle, Ambassador Daeho Kim walked through the ruins of the Galactic Council chambers. The massive room that had once held thousands of alien representatives now sat mostly empty. Broken crystal formations littered the floor where Valari delegates used to float. The air circulation systems that had once carried Nethrix consciousness now moved nothing but ordinary atmosphere. The few aliens who remained sat in the lower sections, no longer the proud rulers of the galaxy, but defeated supplicants hoping for mercy. Their eyes followed Daeho as he walked to the center of the chamber, to the same spot where he had stood months ago to receive humanity's sentence. Today, he was here to deliver theirs. The Terran Republic recognizes the surrender of the former. "Galactic Council," Daeho announced, his voice echoing in the vast space. "Terms of occupation and reconstruction will now be discussed." Overseer Velnath, his crystal body dim and cracked, spoke from what remained of the Valari delegation. "Ambassador Kim, we underestimated your species. Our mathematical models could not account for your methods. Your mathematical models assumed we would fight like you," Daeho replied. "You forgot that humans don't think like crystals or hives or gas clouds. We think like humans." In orbit above the former Council homeworld, Fleet Admiral Bo-Ra Lee commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. Her ships filled the sky, their quantum displacement drives allowing them to appear and disappear at will. The containment field that had once trapped humanity around Earth was gone, dismantled by the same aliens who had built it as part of their surrender terms. "Status report," Bo-Ra requested from her flagship bridge. "All former Council worlds are now under Terran administration," her communications officer reported. "Resistance movements have been neutralized or have surrendered. The transition governments are functioning within acceptable parameters." Bo-Ra nodded, looking out at the stars that were now open to human exploration once again. But more than that, they were now protected by human strength. The galaxy had learned what happened to those who tried to cage humanity. On Earth, President Taemin Yoon stood in the expanded Situation Room, now the command center for governing a galaxy. Holographic displays showed the status of hundreds of worlds, thousands of species, and millions of former Council citizens who were learning to live under human protection. "Give me the final numbers," he requested from his new chief administrator. Hyojin Nam, formerly a colonial administrator who had been evacuated from Council space, stepped forward with her report. "Mr. President, we have confirmed control of 347 major worlds, 847 minor colonies, and 23,456 space stations. Former Council species are adapting to the new order with minimal resistance. And our people? All human agents have been revealed and reassigned to administrative positions. The network Dr. Subin Han built over 7 decades included 2.7 million covert operatives embedded throughout Council space. They're now serving as governors, advisors, and peacekeepers." Taemin walked to the large display showing the galaxy. The old Council territories were now marked in blue, human blue. The transition had been faster than anyone had expected. When a civilization built on fear and control collapses, the species under its rule often welcome new leadership, especially when that leadership proves to be more competent than the old. "Any word from our deep space explorers?" "Captain Kyung-Soo Baek's expedition has made contact with 17 new species beyond the Galactic Rim. All of them are eager to establish trade relations with the Terran Republic. Apparently, word of our capabilities has spread throughout the local star cluster." The president smiled slightly. Humanity's reputation was preceding them now. Species that had never heard of Earth were already sending diplomatic messages, eager to avoid the fate of the former Council. On the former Valari homeworld, now renamed New Geneva, Colonel So-Young Kim oversaw the establishment of the first human cultural center. The crystal forests still rang with musical tones, but now they played melodies composed by human musicians working with Valari artists. "How are they adapting?" So-Young asked her cultural liaison officer. "Better than expected, Colonel. The Valari are actually fascinated by human music. They say our mathematical chaos creates harmony patterns they never imagined possible. Several crystal composers are requesting to study at human music schools." It was a pattern repeating across the former Council territories. Species that had been kept separate and suspicious of each other for millennia were now working together under human guidance. The rigid hierarchies that had defined Council society were being replaced with something more flexible, more creative, more human. On Kolani Hive World Beta 7, now called New Sol, the former drone soldiers were learning to think as individuals for the first time in their species' history. Dr. Young-Ho Kwan's consciousness virus had been refined into a liberation tool, slowly disconnecting Kolani from their hive minds and allowing them to develop personal identities. "The process is irreversible," Young-Ho explained to his research team. "Once a Kolani learns to think independently, they can never return to the hive mind completely. But most of them don't want to. They're discovering that individual consciousness has advantages their species never realized." The transformation was remarkable to observe. Former hive drones were becoming artists, philosophers, inventors, and explorers. Without the rigid thinking patterns imposed by collective consciousness, they were developing creative abilities that surprised even themselves. In the gas clouds of Nimbus, now renamed New Busan, the Nethrix were experiencing their own renaissance. Commander Ha-Nul Lee's atmospheric processors had been modified to create controlled environments where individual Nethrix could maintain their consciousness without losing contact with others. It was like giving them private rooms in a house instead of forcing them to live in one giant space. "They're calling it personal weather," Ha-Nul reported to her superiors. "Each Nethrix can now choose how much connection they want with others. Some prefer to stay mostly individual, others merge into small groups, and a few still maintain large collective formations. But now, it's their choice." Captain Kyung-Soo Bayek's ship, the UES Pioneer, moved through space beyond the galactic rim, exploring regions no Council ship had ever reached. His crew included members from dozens of species, all working together on humanity's continuing mission of exploration and discovery. "New system detected," announced his navigation officer, a young Velari whose crystal body chimed with excitement. 12 planets. Signs of industrial civilization on the Third World." "Are they friendly or hostile?" asked his Kolani tactical officer, one of the first individuals to break free from the hive mind years ago. "Unknown. But according to our sensors, they've detected us too. We're receiving a transmission." The message was simple but significant. "Welcome, travelers from the Terran Republic. We have heard of your victories over the Old Council. We wish to discuss peaceful relations." Even in unexplored space, humanity's reputation had arrived before them. Back in the former council chambers, Ambassador Dae-Ho Kim finished reading the new Galactic Charter. The document established the Terran Republic as the governing authority for the known galaxy, but unlike the Old Council, it included provisions for species independence, cultural preservation, and the right to self-determination. "Any objections to these terms?" Dae-Ho asked the assembled alien representatives. Silence filled the chamber. The aliens had learned that arguing with humans was pointless, not because humans were unreasonable, but because human logic was so different from their own that traditional negotiation tactics simply didn't work. "Then we are agreed. The galaxy enters a new age today." As the session ended and the aliens filed out, Velnath approached Dae-Ho privately. "Ambassador Kim, may I ask you something?" "Of course. How long did your species know this day would come?" Dae-Ho considered the question carefully. "From the moment we met our first alien species and realized they were afraid of us. Fear makes people do stupid things, Overseer. We just prepared for the inevitable stupidity. And if we had welcomed you instead of fearing you, then none of this would have been necessary. We would have been happy to remain one species among many, exploring the galaxy together. But you chose to see us as a threat that needed to be contained. So we became exactly the threat you feared." Velnath's crystal body flickered with what might have been regret. "We created our own worst enemy." "No," Dae-Ho corrected gently. "You revealed who we really were. We never wanted to rule the galaxy. But when you forced us to fight for our survival, you learned that humans are very, very good at fighting. And once we win, we don't stop until we're sure it can never happen again." The old Velari nodded slowly and left the chamber, his footsteps ringing like funeral bells on the crystal floor, alone in the vast space where the Council had once pronounced humanity's containment. Dae-Ho looked up at the stars visible through the chamber's transparent dome. Those stars belonged to humanity now, not through conquest, but through necessity. The galaxy had tried to cage Earth's children and learned too late that some species grow stronger when threatened. The containment field was gone. Humanity was free, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again.